Hello and welcome to the Tough Crowd. I am Mama J, J-Fi, and here's the thing. I'm trying to do these more frequently and then add in the girls as they're available. It's been hard to schedule with everybody's work schedules. That really gets in the way. And so that's the plan. So here's the thing for today, Thursday, March 12th. I have a few things I've been thinking about on my mind. I sort of feel like the world is a little bit upended right now with the different things happening in Iran. The Nancy Guthrie investigation drags on, continues. And I sort of feel like since then, the world has been on upended. Everything is a little bit off, and I think it continues to be a little bit off. And I think speaking of off, the time change has me really off. I don't know why 1 hour throws me for such a loop, but it literally is killing me. And it's been 4 days, and it's so dark in the morning now. It stays light at night, and then I get my second wind. I'm usually in bed by 9 o'clock. I get my second wind, and I realize it's 9 o'clock, and I haven't eaten dinner yet because it's so light out here in Florida. Right now, it's staying light until 7:40, which it doesn't prime your brain to think about eating. And here are some of the things on my mind this week. In general, I'm going to try to do multiple times a week with different things going on that are a little bit of a distraction, maybe, from everything going on in the world. I feel like the world is a little bit on its end right now with the things going on overseas and everything here in the US. I think people feel very unsettled, and I think that Nancy Guthrie is only one person, but I think everybody is unnerved by it. I think all women feel like that could be me if they're ever home alone or living alone or in a vulnerable position. They think that could be me, because how in 2026 is a 84-year-old woman taken and nobody knows where she is? You do anything these days, you're on camera and you're caught relatively quickly, pretty quickly. So there's lots of theories going around. We'll talk about that, but I'm still obsessed with it. And I think that the nation is still obsessed with it. Even though the interest of the press has died down, I think people in general, it puts a pit in your stomach to think about something happening to your mom, your grandmother, or whoever that might be, and then women in general feeling vulnerable because of it. It sort of harks back to Karen Reed, where that was every woman's nightmare to be accused of a crime that I don't believe she committed, and the entire resources of the state, working against you, and some in nefarious ways. And I think that really increased the interest in that trial, because I think we all felt like we are Karen Reed. It harked back to the OJ trial when everybody that was in the Black community felt like they knew what it was like to be persecuted, prosecuted, even though, in my opinion, he was guilty. I understand their feelings in not wanting him to be convicted by what they thought was a racist police department. And there were things that obviously came out that made it so. So I think everything going on today unnerves people. And this week has been crazy with technology. And I've talked to some people and they've had the same issues. Dropbox isn't working well. Photos isn't working well on an Apple Mac. It just says it's not available right now. Dropbox is not available right now when I was trying to put some photos into Dropbox. Very weird things that aren't working quickly. Instagram was working very slowly. So I'm not sure what that is connected to, but I know other people have been complaining about it, and our patience is lacking these days. So I think everybody is tapping their foot, and if something isn't instantaneous, we get frustrated. The time change, going back to that, so the time change, I just still don't get why we do it, and the hour throws me off so much. Even though I've traveled, obviously, to different places where there's a time change, the hour throws me off. So I looked into it, and it's been since 1966. It was originally in World War I for a while. Then they got rid of it. It came back in, and there's all these studies that say losing an hour of sleep disrupts circadian rhythms for days or weeks, leading to significant measurable spikes in adverse effects. And they say the worst one is this one, the spring forward. So it used to be in February and October, and now it's November and March. And heart attacks, research shows a 25% increase in heart attacks on the Monday following the spring ahead. Strokes are 8% higher during the first 2 days after the time change. Cardiovascular events are surge in the days following spring ahead. Overall health impact, they say 150,000 negative health effects, but I don't know how you measure that. That seems like a little bit nebulous and made up. 11% increase in depressive episodes in the weeks. And then fatal traffic accidents increased by 6% during the week following spring ahead. And morning commute risk is higher, pedestrian casualties, deer and vehicle collisions are 16% increase in the fall, which doesn't make sense to me. I guess that's before the time change. Workplace injuries, 5.7% increase in workplace injuries. Judgment errors, which I don't know how you decide that that's due to the time change. People could report that, but I think that could be attributable to a lot of things. 40 minutes less sleep on the Monday night after daylight saving time. And it's saving, no S, saving, not daylights. It's daylight saving time. Migraine frequency goes up. Overall energy use. It's intended to help us save energy, but they've shown that it's a negligible effect. And then some say there's an increase in residential electricity because people use more air conditioning in the evenings, offsetting the lighting savings. So there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of benefit the way society operates these days. So I'm all for getting rid of it and staying on one time. But then the question is, which time is it? And there's a lot of politics for that. So I'm trying to recover from that. It's Wednesday, and probably tonight I will have trouble getting to bed at a normal time. I'm usually in bed pretty early, and I've been pushing it later because I don't think about eating until it starts to get dark, and then the whole wind down, taking the dogs out. So that's the story. That's the struggle with that. My other struggle is with medical appointments. So I don't know if, and I go to some medical offices where the receptionist and the people working there are fantastic, very friendly. I enjoy going there. They make things easy. And then I go to several others where I feel like the people that are in these positions went to some secret sorority type school where they said, okay, we're going to train you on how to make everybody's life more challenging when they come into the doctor's office. For example, I went to a new allergist the other day. I have a allergy shot schedule, and I came in for my appointment. I had filled out, of course, 50 sheets of paper on an iPad before I got there and spent about 20 minutes on it, giving them the history that I had already given them. But okay, I'll play along. And I went in and they said, no, you have 10 other pages you have to fill out. Filled those out on the clipboard, and she said, the nurse is going to want to go over those with you. So in my mind, that meant I was going to keep them with me and give them to her when she called my name. I sat there for 20 minutes. Finally, I went up and I said, is anybody going to come out and get me? And she said, well, we're waiting for that paperwork. And I said, well, I thought I was bringing it in with me. She said, no, you're going to give it back to me. And I said, well, I've been sitting here 3 feet from you for 20 minutes twiddling my thumbs Did you think that I was that developmentally challenged that I couldn't have filled out these papers in, 10 minutes, 20 minutes? She didn't seem to care. And that's sort of the attitude at some of these places, and I don't get it. And maybe it's just self-protection because other patients are rude. I get it. I just feel like they are not cognizant of what you have going on in your life, and you show up for the appointment, and the cliche of, you show up at 8 o'clock, your appointments, and you don't get in until 10 o'clock, and people are frustrated. You're sitting in the room and you're losing time out of your day, whatever you're doing, whether you're going into an office or not, it's not fair. That being said, there's some other offices where, again, they're very fantastic, respectful. And I just think there's got to be some sort of training school where they're saying, okay, all right, people, we're going to make these forms look like they were Xeroxed in 1989. We're going to put teeny tiny spaces where you can't possibly put a full address in there. And then when you get down to the 75th question about your health and they ask you about prior surgeries, we're going to put a very small 1-inch line where you can fill in all the information about your surgeries. So I don't know who's doing this. And I think all of us, especially me, I find I'm very challenged writing anything now. I type so much on my phone, on my computer for work. I don't do a lot of handwriting. I do take notes in handwriting, but to do your handwriting well, I find it a challenge. I feel like I'm losing that skill and I need to practice it more because it's becoming worse. So that makes it even harder when you go there. The other thing is whenever you call the office and they say, hello, this is so-and-so's doctor's office. If this is a medical emergency, please hang up and call 911. I don't know who's calling the dermatologist for a medical emergency, but hey, I don't know. Not everybody thinks like I do, I guess. I would not be doing that. And then they always lure you in and say, please listen to all of our options because our options have changed. They have not changed. They haven't changed since 2020 because you still have a COVID message at the end of your recording. So I'm not listening to all your options. I know it's still 0. Most of them will let you get through with 0. Some of them are on to me, and that will get you nowhere. And you do have to listen to all the options. So those are the challenges at going to the doctor these days, and then the general health insurance issues, if there's a claim, if they don't pay it correctly, if they have to recode it. So that's a challenge. The main thing I'm still obsessed with, though, is the Nancy Guthrie case. I can't get over it. I can't get over that we can't figure out what happened. And I find it so sad and nauseating for their family and for her, obviously, and everybody that knew her. And I just find a lot of it very bizarre. I just find it suspicious that we have nothing. We have this guy with the plant at the front door and the face mask, and we've got nothing else. And maybe they have other things, they're just not telling us. And so there's people that keep coming up with theories. And I think you go to really ridiculous theories when they're not giving us any information. So I'm hoping they solve it soon, but I think everybody is obsessed with it and going way overboard with some of their theories. So some of the most recent theories, the Daily Mail had 6 theories. So the timeline, everybody knows. She went home. She was dropped off by her son-in-law. She went missing in the middle of the night. They say that she's been taken out of her bed, according to Savannah's Instagram post. They got multiple ransom notes, none of which were proven true, and no payments were made, ostensibly. The weird part is, and again, I've never been in that position, so I don't know what it's like to be in that position. But if I was a news figure like Savannah with all the connections that I have at NBC News, Dateline, and anybody else in that industry, I'm sure would be willing to help her. I don't understand why you're not having press conferences, why you're not having a prayer vigil, why you're not out there promoting it every day. Any rinky-dink situation in Nowheresville, US now has an attorney as the spokesperson, a family person as a spokesperson, somebody keeping it alive that's the face of the family. And I find it very odd that that's never been the case. I don't know why that is. I'm sure she was maybe counseled against it, but it doesn't seem kosher that that's the case. I just think anybody I know, if that was the case, somebody in our group or a community or family would be out there really pushing in the press, in the public, for the news to stay active. And now the case just feels like it's very cold, but it may not be cold. And she's supposedly going back to work, which I don't begrudge her that, obviously. I don't know what she's supposed to do out in Arizona anymore. I did find it odd that her reunion at the Today Show was in the studio right through the glass so that anybody could film it. TMZ filmed it from right outside the glass to see exactly what was going on. So that seems like that was planned that way. And then they released a statement from what happened at that meeting. And that seems to me that that should be a private meeting, especially since she hasn't said anything about, they haven't had a spokesperson come out and say anything about the investigation or what the family wants from the investigation. I know she posted things on Instagram, but I don't know. There's just something really off about it. And I'm not going out to all the crazy theories about somebody did it to distract from the current news. I am going with the theory that the sheriff there is no good, that he is not up to the job, and that certain things were done that hampered the investigation. I know that's an easy thing to say because his appearance he doesn't inspire confidence. So the theories they have going are a crazed fan. That was my feeling initially when I walked in and my husband had the TV on in the morning Today Show, and it had the headline that Savannah Guthrie's mother's missing. And I, of course, first thought, well, she has Alzheimer's or some other disability. She wandered off, and that was not the case. Quickly, they were telling you it was not the case. And then my first gut reaction was stalker. I don't know why I said that. There's been no evidence of that, but they haven't talked about whether Savannah has a stalker, but there's been a long history of stalkers in this country. And I think it's only gotten worse with social media because people can see you not just on TV, they can see you on their phone, which is a very personal device, multiple times a day, as many times as they want, depending upon your personality. So I think a lot of people are deep in themselves, in their own house. They're not socializing well because after COVID, people got used to not having to socialize, and that they probably feel like, I know Savannah, this is a way to get her attention. So whether it was to try to get her attention and then not do anything nefarious and something happened to her mother during that time, or whether it was just to get back at her because they weren't, she wasn't answering their letters. I don't know what, but that's always been my theory. And there's been different stalkers that have done things. Recently, the girl that won the gold medal had a stalker and had to drop out of a competition, the gold medal in ice skating. Rihanna had some woman shoot an AK-47 at her house in a drive-by. And supposedly she is a stalker, that she was at some other celebrity's house recently. So I feel like this just gives other people ideas. And if I was a celebrity with anybody, with a parent or anybody else vulnerable, I would have high security. I think they should anyways, but this, I think, just spotlights it. And in our neighborhood here, I know a lot of the gentlemen that walk, and there's a couple guys that we've been talking about this when I pass them and what's our latest theory. And I said, it's very unnerving, this, what happened to this woman. And my friend Alvin said, he roasted me and said, don't worry, you're not rich enough to be kidnapped. So I've got that going for me. But I think it is unnerving if it were a stalker. Did they get what they wanted out of it because she's been posting these direct messages on Instagram, which ostensibly seemed like they were talking to a particular person? So was that enough to give this person what they wanted? And I don't even want to think what's happened to Nancy Guthrie. I find it just so tremendously sad for everybody and terrifying. So I can't go that far into it, except to think that this stalker was doing it for attention and something went wrong, or they did something purposeful. I don't know if I believe the revenge motive, which I'll get to, but the second one was a burglary gone wrong. I totally dismiss that. I'm sorry. I think that's crazy where it is in Tucson. I've been to Tucson, and I don't know her neighborhood, obviously, but there are some very rural parts of Tucson. And where she was, you don't stumble upon it. And she wasn't dressing like the Kardashians with jewels and all kinds of fancy stuff. Maybe she had things in that house of which I'm unaware, but I just think that doesn't make any sense. And then if it is a burglary, like if something happens, you're going to take her with you. None of that makes sense to me. So I dismiss that. If it's somebody that knew her, that was working in the house and had seen her and was aware of her and came back to steal something, that's the third theory. Then something went wrong and they didn't want to be identified because she saw their face, they would take her with them. Possibly, but again, I need to know what was missing from that house. I don't know what she could have possibly had in there that would have made it worth it, but maybe somebody on drugs is desperate and would do things that I wouldn't think of. The fourth is a professional theory, like a professional hit, like somebody hired a group to come in and do this. Originally, they had, looked at the family because of the son-in-law dropping her off. But somebody hired somebody that has really faded because I think they've gone through everybody close to her and there doesn't appear to be any evidence of anybody needing money or doing anything for money. But they haven't ever released what's been taken from the house, if anything. So that would be interesting. Cartel connection. It doesn't seem like a drug cartel would have done it in this way. They had the guy on camera with the gloves that showed a pinky ring. Is that possibly part of a drug cartel or a gang? And that they took her across the border? But what would be the purpose of that? It doesn't seem like the cartels would want any attention on them. Why would they try to do something that would bring attention to them and shut down their movements or their operations? There seems to be that they would ask for something. So it doesn't seem like there's any evidence of it here. The last theory, there's just so many unanswered questions that they're going back and canvassing neighbors and they have tips galore coming in, but nothing has been released that leads us to believe that they're close to a suspect. The DNA didn't come back in the federal database, and there are databases they can use with the genealogical research like they did in the Koberger, but that's a much lesser, there's fewer people in that, way fewer people. So they'd have to hope that there's somebody related to this person in that database or get a court order to go in Ancestry or 23andMe. So there's people that are saying in the FBI sources that the case is red hot. It's not cold, that there's tons of leads. But still, I think it unnerves everybody in the U.S. that something like this can occur in this day and age because they have said there will be no more serial killers in this country because of the tracking of arrests and cars and, phones and everything else. You're tracked everywhere. And then it's very, back in the 70s and the 80s and the 60s, 70s, 80s, there wasn't all of that. There was no trail unless you had your picture taken in the security camera at a gas station, perhaps. So now there's all this tracking. You get tracked everywhere. You talk to your friend about a sofa at Pottery Barn and you go home and it's on your phone for an ad. So I think all of us just don't understand why there's no tracking of this person. Nothing has come up. And again, maybe they have other stuff, but I don't know. I'm going with the stalker theory. I think it was a stalker who wanted the attention and something went wrong. He didn't know how to take care of her. Something went wrong when he abducted her. And as horrible as that is to think about, and this is where we are. Because if it was a true ransom, they would have asked for money so far. They have not done that, except these fake people, and there was nothing to say that, they gave them proof of life. So I'm going with the stalker theory. I hope they solve it soon. And I hope we get some answers to why the Guthrie family has proceeded like they have. Maybe they got advice from a lawyer. I don't know. But I find it very strange that this has been how it's conducted. The other strange thing that's happened recently is that there's a general who was in charge of UFOs, Albuquerque, New Mexico. And so his name is William Neal McCaslin, and he was a general that was in charge in the U.S. Army, and he was in charge of UFOs. Now, recently they've talked about releasing all the UFO information to the public, just like they release different files on Epstein and JFK's assassination. They're talking about releasing these. Right around the time they're talking about it, this guy who's 68, I don't know, they haven't reported that he had any medical conditions, but that he disappeared after leaving his home on foot, leaving his phone behind. So let's see, what else do they have to say about it? So William Neal McCaslin was reported missing after leaving his Albuquerque, New Mexico home on foot. According to local authorities who have teamed up with the FBI to find the former military official. He vanished reportedly along a running trail without his watch and phone, suggesting something nefarious. He's known to be mentally and physically fit, so that's troubling that he is that and he went missing in this way. And that he may know whatever secrets the government may be hiding about UFOs and non-human intelligent life. And they said due to his medical issues, law enforcement is concerned for his safety. So on one hand, they say that he's mentally and physically fit, but then they're saying they're concerned for his safety. So I'm not sure which it is. And that he was seen as being sympathetic to the idea of releasing all the UFO and alien life files. So it's just very strange that right around the time that it was announced they might be released, he's all of a sudden gone. And that they're saying this is a man with the most sensitive secrets of the United States in his head. So that's been going on since February 27th. So I think we're 40 days into the Nancy Guthrie disappearance. And so with him, we're what, 12 days in, and it hasn't really been covered that much. So I'm very interested to see. I hope they find him, but that is very suspicious, which leads me to believe that the world is on its end. And speaking of the world on its end, poor Britney Spears, she is having a meltdown. I feel so bad for this girl. She was put to work as a singer, actor, celebrity at such a young age, supporting her family. And as we know, she had a conservatorship. Her father was in charge of it for a few years. She had gone off the rails. She was seen at one point, she had shaved her head and she was fighting with the press with umbrellas and just looking completely nuts. And so her father was appointed conservator of her estate and then reportedly wasn't giving her money. These are the reports that came up. So her whole fan club was protesting. There was a whole movement to rid her of the conservatorship. In fact, I was so behind it, I actually had a shirt that said "Free Britney." I was so convinced that she was being hoodwinked by her father and these trustees. They were spending all her money and they weren't giving her money for what she wanted when she was the one who had earned it all. So I was outraged for her. So they finally overturned it. She was given back her money. She got engaged to somebody and then they called off the engagement. But now she's posting very disturbing videos on Instagram where she's half clothed or not even, like, maybe no clothes on top, where they've put like little covers on like Instagram hearts to cover up what's going on there. But she looks very distressing, and her house looks like it's a mess behind her. And then within the last few days, she was arrested for DWI. So why on earth is she driving? I'm sorry. I know a lot of people around here, when they go out, they have somebody drive them. They don't drive themselves, and they have way less money than Britney Spears does. So that tells me that she's really in trouble. She doesn't have the judgment to have a driver, or maybe somebody who didn't want to take her. I didn't even know where she was going at the time. So that's a distressing situation. They're not releasing the mugshot, they said, out of concern for her privacy, which is, a little too much, a lot too late at this point, because she's been really subjected to this torture of the press her entire life. So I feel horrible for her with everything she's accomplished in life. And she's not very old. I think she's only 40, 44 maybe, but she's been in show business for 30 something years at least. I don't know how old she was when she started. So I am praying that they get her some help. I hope that she has a relationship with her children. I know that was at risk before. So that's a really sad situation that I'm watching. But I do feel like, again, the energy in the world is just off. And then we have Rihanna, who has somebody came with an AK-47, as I said, and was shooting at her house. The rumors online, of course, conspiracy was that Jay-Z was trying to take her out because of her album, which makes no sense. I know nothing about the Jay-Z Rihanna beef, if there is one, but if he was going to take her out, he'd take her out like they took out Tupac when they wanted to take him out. They wouldn't be driving by her house and shooting into the masonry. That makes zero sense. So I dismiss that idea, and I can only imagine how terrifying that is for her. I guess she has 3 children. Last thing is, it is spring break here in Palm Beach. Actual spring break for college kids, and then high school kids from all over the country are coming here this week, next week. So the traffic is abysmal, but that's all right. The price of living here in paradise. It has been what I call spring break for old people here in Palm Beach County since early January, and continues until probably May. And it's just a little crazy. People come down here and they've been cold. I get it. They get out and they're not wearing a coat anymore, and it's warm and there's sunshine. They can go to the beach. But the level of craziness with the driving is off the charts more than usual. And the biggest problem I see is the sponsor of Spring Break Old People's Edition, the speakerphone. It is an epidemic. It is everywhere. In the produce section, in the frozen foods aisle, in the dairy section, everybody's on a speakerphone yelling at Harvey about the wallpaper, or talking about their mother's medical condition at a high decibel volume. I don't know why they don't have AirPods. I don't know why they're talking like that in public. I see them on the bike path, on the walking path. I see them in the doctor's office. They're actually watching. There was a gentleman watching a full-on comedy video on his phone, no AirPods, no headphones. I see people walking, blaring 80s music and down the sidewalk, and you can hear it for a long time. So I don't quite get what's going on with that, but that seems to be the sponsor of this year's Spring Break Old People Edition, is the speakerphone. So on that note, I am going to sign off for now, and we'll be back next time, and we'll be talking about Love is Blind. If you haven't watched Love is Blind, you need to catch up. The reunion show is coming out today, March 11th. And then Love Story, the JFK Jr. Carolyn Bessette story. I love it. I think it's great. And I think the younger generations are loving it because they weren't around when it was going on. So they are really enthralled with it, the fashion. And now it makes me look back at pictures of myself from back then, and I think, okay, it makes sense, because I kept thinking the clothes I wore back then were very harsh for me. The dark colors and the heavy belts and the loafers, and then the jeans weren't soft back then. They were all 100% cotton, no stretch. So everybody just sort of looked all the same, like we all shopped at Gap. Not as great as Carolyn Bessette looks in this, or the actress playing Carolyn Bessette looks in this show, but it's definitely worth a watch. The music's fantastic, and then explaining it to Maisie, who wasn't obviously around then, who Jackie O was, why she was Jackie O versus Jackie Kennedy, and everything that had gone on at that time is very interesting. So that we're going to talk about next time. But Love is Blind, I'm telling you, it is really an easy series to watch because you just forget about everything and think, what is happening with these people? And then by the end, you realize that's why they're on this show. That's why they couldn't find somebody on their own and they had to go on this show. So signing off. See you later.